Unless you have understanding, it will be always difficult to forgive. You have to have understanding of where you are at, of your own situation, your own life. But also, secondly, you need to have understanding about the other person. So my mother was 16 years old when she fell pregnant. And when she went back to my father, telling him that she was expecting his child, my father ran away. And so I've never met my father up to this day. So I grew up looking around me with all the other kids and how they were playing with their parents and their father, but I never had the opportunity. Something also that influenced me significantly, if I look back, that at the age of about 7, my mother died. And I think if I look back in my own life, that's when I think my whole life changed, because I couldn't understand this loving God, this one that we have prayed every evening, that wants to do the best for you. All of a sudden, if he knew my mother was my only security, why would he come and take her away? So as a young boy of 7 years old, I began to struggle very much with all the values that we have been growing up as Christian and praying and God will come through. And yet here the reality is my father ran away. My mother died. And I remember standing in front of the grave of my mother and everybody was crying. And that day, something in this little boy was just like a world breaking open. And I remember walking away, even saying very loud to myself, I hate you, God.
Affected by these tragic events, at a tender age, Wilson had to move in with his grandfather, who lived and worked on a farm.
And this particular one morning, I was on my way to school when the farmer that we lived on stopped at our house. And it's like yesterday, just not asking, telling us that as from today, I had to go and work on the farm. And so my whole world as a young boy, all these dreams that I had of wanting to become a traffic officer or a lawyer, all of a sudden was crushing. And I had to go and work on the farm for R1 a month. I started to hate white people. I had one great passion in my life. I always hoped that if I can get a gun and enough ammunition, I wanted just to kill everybody. A root of bitterness started to grow up in me. And all of a sudden, the things that I've been thinking inside of me, the questions that I've been asking was almost like coming together. Why did my father run away? And why did, if God is really loving, why did he took my mother away from me? And now, a white farmer, not even asking us permission, coming and taking my life away. And I think that morning, for me, all of a sudden, all these thoughts and questions I had was almost coming together and make me believe that perhaps God is also white. And remembering sitting behind the house and saying, God, I hate you. By now, I was about 10 years old, and the bitterness and the unforgiveness has grown to a point that I had all these thoughts through me. And I think part of me was I wanted not even my own relatives to know where I was going. I wanted to run away from the farm and away from everybody that knows me and somehow go and start a new life and perhaps. But this freedom that I was looking, I had to pay a very high price, because as I was running away from home soon, I found myself in a place called Jeffreys Bay, and I began involved with all sorts of wrong people, started to smoke and begin to use drugs. And I end off at the age of 18 years, addicted to drugs, living on the streets, full of bitterness. I hated my own people.
Aimlessly roaming from one town to another, Wilson eventually embraces the Christian faith. Eager to grow in his newfound faith, he attends a special course.
So then I went to Cape Town, and this is where my whole life changed. During this course, we would have every morning lectures, and then every week we have a different speaker. And specifically this morning, on my way to lectures, I heard this voice telling me that you are the biggest racist on this place. And we were 50 students, and four of us were people of color. And that day, when I pause and stop and think about it, I realized that although I've met God, deep inside of me, I haven't dealt with the issues of unforgiveness and hatred, the issues of my own family. And I remember the next day I went to the class and asked for forgiveness, because deep inside of me, I was still hating white people.
It was during an encounter with the community member that Wilson's newfound convictions were put to the test.
And as we were talking and explaining who we are, just young people, we want to come, we Christians, want to come and bless you. And she said, man, it's never happened. And I took over the conversation and I said, man, you know, we're just here and we want to bless you. Can I go and work in the garden? And at that point, the door went open and it was a husband that came from work. And as he saw me sitting there, the next moment he started to shout. And he ran straight to me and started to beat me.
During the attack, the angry man reached for his revolver. Wilson, fearing for his own life, immediately made a dash for the nearest exit.
I've never been so excited and so happy to see light, and I knew that's where I wanted to be. Now, my heart was beating. I can't explain to you the emotions that I was feeling, knowing that this guy, the man is after me, he's having a revolver in his hand. And I ran through his kitchen, into his garden, and I jump up and I jump over his fence, and I went, because of the shock and the pain, I went and lie in the middle of the road. And I remember thinking that if I die or if he shoot me in the road, at least this belongs to government and it's not in his house.
That night, during a spiritual encounter, Wilson felt the urge to forgive his attacker.
And the next day I went and bought him this beautiful bunch of flowers. And I wrote on this card, my name is Wilson. I'm the man that you were beating yesterday in your house. Just want you to know that I love you. And I took this bunch of flowers, and of course we need to be wise, and I made sure there was nobody at the house and put it right in front of his door. And I ran away.
1 month after the violent attack, Wilson received an invitation to address a congregation in the community.
And as I lift up my head and look in the back, there the man that was beating me that day, he was sitting there. And I felt prompted in my heart to tell the story again, what happened that day. And I began to share with the people. And this young gentleman, he was running up to where I was standing and falling in front of my feet and saying, I'm that guy that you were just testifying again that beat you that day. Can you forgive me? He looked at me and he said, could you please come and have lunch with me? And it was so strange that the first time that I came to his house wanting to serve, he beaten me. And this time, because of forgiveness, he invited me to come and have lunch. I always had this feeling that my life was robbed from me. That farmer took my life. But when I started to forgive, I was actually giving myself a second chance in life.